Hello, my name is Aaron Grossman, and I'm the founder and CEO of Alliance Solutions Group. And I wanted to welcome you to our company. And today, what I hope to do is spend a little bit of time with you to introduce you to our culture, what Alliance is all about, why we exist, how we add value, and how we serve the communities that we do. But first, I want to spend some time talking to you a little bit about the history of me and my entrepreneurial journey and how I got to a position where we could start this company, Alliance Solutions Group, and build it to what it is today. So let me talk to you a little bit about the history of me and how I got to a position where I could eventually start my own company and start Alliance Solutions Group. There really are two things in my life, two monumental things in my life that I think inspired me to a journey of entrepreneurship. One was my parents, and two was the sport of wrestling. So first, let me talk a little bit about my parents and their inspiration for my journey of entrepreneurship. So my parents were entrepreneurs. Can't recall any time in my life where they actually had worked for anybody. So they always looked at doing things independently and started many businesses. Unfortunately, my parents weren't the best entrepreneurs, or I shouldn't say weren't the most successful entrepreneurs. And so a lot of times they ended up failing at the endeavors that they were a part of. I recall one of those experiences when I was in 5th grade where my dad had actually started a recycling company, and he had these big golden goat machines, and he would put them outside of grocery stores, for example. This is before recycling really was anything of any importance, and people would be able to come and basically take their aluminum cans and put them into the golden goat machine, and they'd be able to get money from that, and then my dad would take them to go get recycled. So the business was pretty cool. It was definitely ahead of its time, but unfortunately it was ahead of its time, and it ended up failing in the long run. As a result of that, my parents really suffered financially from that experience. So my brother and I were delivering newspapers for roughly about a month when all of this started to come about, and my parents, were failing in the recycling business that they had, and it actually had gotten so bad that they actually couldn't afford the gas bill, and so we didn't have that in the house. And I remember we had an electric stove, and for like almost 2 weeks, my parents would heat hot water. My mom would heat hot water on the stove and get it to a boiling point, and then put it in the tub so that my brother and I could at least take baths before we went to school in the morning. So we're delivering the newspapers. My brother and I definitely preferred our beauty sleep, so we didn't like waking up in the morning. So my parents ended up, we wanted to quit, and my parents, thought that, thinking differently, and I guess that's a key word that I'll say from this point forward. They thought differently about it, and at the time they just they needed money, so they ended up taking on the paper route that my brother and I were doing, just so that they can pay the gas bill. So they did that. Well, in doing so, again, thinking differently, because my parents always thought differently, they realized that there was an opportunity. At that time, it was really only kids and teenagers that would deliver the newspaper, but they were actually independent contractors of the plain dealer. So at that time, they could actually purchase the papers from the plain dealer and deliver it and charge whatever they wanted to as a markup to the end user. So their idea was, let's find a bunch of rich people and deliver newspapers to them and charge a premium on the markup. And they actually did that, and it was successful. So within about 6 months, they were delivering to over 2,000 people every single day. And over time, they were making over a 6-figure income delivering the newspaper, and really actually changed the way people thought about newspaper delivery. And it actually, over time, turned into an adult industry. And in Northeast Ohio here, they ended up creating depots where adults would come together, and it became an adult profession. So really always admired my parents around their ability to think differently about everything, including delivering the newspaper. So that was a huge influence for me, inspired me throughout the course of my life to always think differently about everything. The second big influence in my life was the sport of wrestling. And I started wrestling when I was 6 years old, ended up wrestling in college at Miami of Ohio. And wrestling really is a great sport for somebody who ends up taking the journey of entrepreneurship, because there is an individual component to it, and it's a huge sacrifice that you have to make. Wrestling taught me about perseverance. It taught me how to create self-discipline and establish goals of what I wanted to achieve, knowing that I was the only one that could do the things that were required in order for me to create the success that I thought I could achieve. And at the end of the day, when you get on a wrestling mat, it's just you versus your opponent, and you're either going to get your hand raised or you're not. And if you don't get your hand raised, there really is no one else to blame. There wasn't anybody else on that mat other than you. So I learned really at an early age what it meant to be accountable for my actions and to really own the experience and be accountable to that. So wrestling was a huge inspiration for me. I still sometimes, I think I was able to transition the way I looked at wrestling, the way I prepared for it into business, and I really oftentimes go in every single day thinking that today's a wrestling match. Sometimes I wear a singlet underneath my shirt. Just kidding, I don't wear a singlet. But I do believe that wrestling was a huge inspiration for me. So really, the two inspirational things in my life that helped me on my journey to entrepreneurship were my parents and the sport of wrestling. As I mentioned earlier, I ended up wrestling in college, and I went to Miami of Ohio, great academic school, and majored in finance, and was really fortunate in my business career in that I had 2 jobs prior to starting this company, and both of those jobs were hugely instrumental in giving me the tools and the experience that I needed to create success as an entrepreneur. So my first job out of college was working for a company called Mapes and Company, and they were an insurance brokerage firm headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio. Very small, family-owned company. I think out of the 10 or 12 people that worked there, half of them had the last name of Mapes. And it was my first introduction into a business that specialized in something. So at the time, they specialized in oil and gas, in insuring oil and gas. So what they would do is work with oil and gas companies, and then they would find insurance companies that would write the risks for those oil and gas companies. So they were what's considered to be a broker. So they hired me right out of college, and the owner of the business was very interested in diversifying away from oil and gas. So he gave me a very entrepreneurial experience right out of college, and I didn't know that then. I never even knew that until I reflected back years later. But basically he told me, he's like, you don't have to sell anything for the first 6 months. I want you to figure out something to insure that's not oil and gas. Find something that you're passionate about and figure out how to create a business from it. I'm like, all right. So, I just gotten done with my wrestling career, so I was really big into health and fitness. So I decided I wanted to insure the health and fitness industry. So then I had to go and find out, well, what are the risks of a fitness center, for example, and understand what those risks were, and then understand how would insurance companies write those risks, and was there even an insurance company that I could develop a program around that can be a competitive program that then I can go and take to market and sell to fitness clubs. So in that 6-month period of time, I was able to find an insurance company that had a program that was competitive, and so I was able to kind of take that to market. But then I had to find out, well, how do I find out who all the fitness clubs are? How do I sell to them? How do I market to them? How do I track all of this information? And so I had to figure that out all on my own, and was able to do so, and actually able to create some success. I was able to get sales within my first year. I think I did a couple $100,000 of sales in my first year. And so that was all great, a true entrepreneurial experience. I also learned a lot about culture and how important it was to feel good about where you work. So while the owner of the company is a great guy, I learned a lot from him. He was in his early 60s. His wife, who was our secretary, she was also in her 60s. He was very entrepreneurial, wanted to continue to grow, wasn't ready to retire. His wife, on the other hand, was completely ready to retire and was not happy at all that I was there. So I think in the 2.5 years I worked there, as soon as you walked into the door, she was the first person you'd see, and I would say hi to her and good morning or whatever, and not once in those 2 years did she ever respond to me or even look up. So it was really unsettling and uncomfortable, and that kind of culture permeated throughout the office. So it was really quiet. It was just, sometimes it was scary. I remember there were a couple times where I'd just get so annoyed with how quiet it was. I'd go into the bathroom, take toilet paper, wet it, take it back and throw it into people's cubicles just to get a reaction, which was kind of funny. But I think it all kind of came to a head for me when a local radio station actually came live on the radio during Christmas time, holding a Christmas tree, knocked on our door, and said somebody had called up and said we were the Scrooge of Cincinnati, this little small company. So I think I realized then that this wasn't an opportunity that I was going to make a career out of. And quite honestly, I don't think I was ready to truly be in an entrepreneurial role at that time. I didn't have the right discipline and the right passion around that at that time. So I ended up looking for another opportunity. So I would transition to the next opportunity. So I put my resume online and looking for what else could be out there, and ended up getting a call from a company called Robert Half International, which they were at the time and may still be the world's largest specialized staffing agency, and they had multiple specialized staffing companies underneath their portfolio. And the one that was targeting me was a company called Account Temps, and they specialized in accounting and financial placements. And I had graduated from Miami University with a finance degree, so there was a connection around that. But honestly, I had never heard that this industry existed. No idea. No idea that companies would pay other companies to help find them talent. And I didn't know that there were temporary employees. It just never registered with me, and they don't teach you that in college. So I went in for the interview, and I went in actually for 3 interviews. And there was about 60 people in the office in Cincinnati, and most of them, I was in my mid-20s at that time. Most of them were around my age, so it was definitely different than the company I had originally worked for. And I remember telling my mom, I'm like, it seems like a pretty good opportunity. I don't know a lot about the industry, but I just want to get the heck out of where I'm at right now. So I ended up taking the job and immediately fell in love with it. It was the exact opposite experience of my first job. My first job, as I mentioned, was very entrepreneurial. Go figure it out. Now, Account Temps, they said the same thing. Well, they said it's very entrepreneurial as long as you follow our plan, and we have it detailed out to everything detailed out. All of the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and as long as you follow that plan, this is going to be a really entrepreneurial experience for you, which it really wasn't. But I actually was able to take my wrestling background and really translate it into that experience. So the office was really tight. We didn't have our own offices. Our cubicles were really on top of each other. So my manager sat maybe 2 feet to the right of me, and her eyes would be this big, watching everything that I would do, critiquing every phone call that I would have had. And some people could have looked at that as micromanagement and gotten upset. I was such through my wrestling experience, I always wanted to learn from the best. And I always was interested in seeing how they did things and hearing how they did things. And I enjoyed when someone would critique me. So I didn't take offense to it at all. In fact, I really believed that she wanted to see me become great. And so I really came into the experience with that feeling, and I just absorbed it all. So for 6 months, really absorbed the team around me, which I had an experienced team around me, and just tried to learn and follow the plan. So I did, and ended up creating a lot of success fairly quickly. So within a 12 to 14 month time frame, I ended up becoming the number one, they call them staffing managers, in an 8-state region, so roughly around 600 people. So it was right around that time when I started creating a lot of success that my parents ended up kind of going up on my shoulder, and that think differently mentality started to present itself, and started thinking a little bit differently. How can I'm pretty good at this, I like doing this. How can I do it maybe a little bit differently? So I started to do a couple of tweaks to the process. And for whatever reason, people above me allowed me to do that and continue to create success. Finally had an opportunity to manage, and they moved me from Cincinnati, Ohio, up to Columbus, Ohio, actually the Worthington office to manage what at that time was an underperforming office for them. And I was very interested in having an opportunity to lead people. There was a small team. There was 3 people on the team, and I was the 4th. And but at that time, I had some unique things that I was doing, and I started educating my staff on what those things were. Within a 6-month period of time, the processes that I had in place and some of the unique things that I was doing started to really work within the team. So one of the people on our team ended up becoming the number 1 person on the scorecard that I had formerly had attained, and we had taken the division which was an underperforming division, to the 3rd fastest growing division in the world for all of account temps within about 6 months. So then the think differently comes back on. So and now it's really more about, do I really need a $1 billion company at the time to support my future growth? So decided I wanted to go on a path to see if I could start my own business. And I got really, really lucky. So usually when you're looking to start your own business, you have to figure out what your business plan is going to be like, and you have to talk about what your business is, what kind of financial projections can you foresee in the future, what kind of investment do you need to support that, all of that detail. I mean, business plans can be really, really thick, and I didn't even know how to do one. At that time, I just wanted to figure out, how do you start your own staffing company? Can you do it? So we ended up having a dinner with somebody who had just left my old company. He had been a couple of levels up in management. Prior to him working at Account Temps and Robert Half, he had been a minority owner of a staffing firm and had sold out to a big multinational. So I think he had moved over to the Robert Half Account Temps world to kind of buy his time to figure out what his next entrepreneurial move was going to be. What it ended up being was him and his brother got the sole distributorship of this drink called Red Bull, which I'm sure everybody knows of now. But back in 2000, no one had actually really heard of that yet on the East Coast. It was more of a West Coast thing. So he had just started that, left Robert Half. So we had dinner with him and talked about starting our own business. So he thought that we were ready to do that, and then actually had somebody who he thought would be a potential investor. And that potential investor was actually the majority owner of the staffing company he was a minority owner of prior to selling out to the big multinational. So he set up a meeting with a gentleman by the name of George Morales, spelled Jorge Morales, but he was out of Detroit, Michigan. So again, not knowing how to create a business plan, I had like an Excel spreadsheet that I had made up of numbers of things I thought I could do, and we went up on a Saturday morning. So at the time there was me and Kevin Kramer, who helped found the company, and then another gentleman who's no longer with us. And we drove up to Detroit, Michigan, and we met with George. And I spoke for maybe about 45 minutes, and I wish I could have captured what I said, because it must have been pretty good. The next day, he called us, and he was willing to invest in us and was willing to give us $250,000 to start this entrepreneurial journey, this Alliance Solutions Group, and to start this business, and was completely overwhelmed and excited about that someone who really thought that much of us that they were willing to do that. So now I had the opportunity to start my own business. So now we've got investment into starting the business, and I was actually able to take the first 2 jobs that I had and be able to leverage those 2 experiences to help create the business. So as we were looking to start Alliance, I reflected back on my first job and having to create all of those different things that I mentioned earlier, create marketing, create target lists, how do I advertise, all of that stuff. I was able to create systems. So I created all of that stuff like I did in my first job and just replicated that with our new company. At the same time, the second job really focused in on process and having it very defined. So they had a very defined process. There was no need for me to recreate the wheel on how to do this. I just really followed through on the process. Now the only nuance that I had is that this was going to be my first time ever in my career. I'm 27 years old, of not having someone to oversee me or manage me. And that can be hard. So again, taking the experience of wrestling and that self-discipline, I was inspired by my career in wrestling. I also leveraged my manager Tanya, who had the big eyes, as I was mentioning earlier. I pretended that she was there, sitting right next to me still, and just had my imaginary manager and got to work. So we started the company on July 4th, 2001. Actually traveled. I was dating somebody at the time who ended up marrying out of Houston, Texas, and actually flew up the night before, and just so that we could start on July 4th, have a memorable date to start with, but also we knew that no one would be in the office and we could make phone calls and just practice. So started the company. Again, both of my experiences prior to starting the company was around specialized staffing, so that's really what I being specialized in something. So that's what I kind of grew up in and really had a passion around. So we started the company as a specialized staffing service, and we started it with a financial practice, an administrative and support practice, and an industrial practice. And at any given time, the way we present to the market was that we were specialized, and I might be the person that does industrial if they needed if that particular company needed other staffing opportunities that weren't industrial. I would introduce them to one of my partners and told them that they were focused on that. So we always started, even though we didn't have the infrastructure to really be specialized, we always marketed ourselves that way. And we grew. So we did $200,000 in our first year, did a couple million our second year. By 2007, which was 6 years into the business, we had broken the $20 million barrier, and which was super exciting. So by that time, we were starting to build the infrastructure around the specialized staffing concept and started to create these brands that we have today with respect to specialized staffing. So over the course of the years, it's 2016 now. We have grown significantly. The plan for this year is to hit the $100 million milestone. But we won a lot of awards along the way around, at first the specialized staffing concept, which really benefited us through 2012. Right around 2012, I realized that, and in order for us to scale to that next level, had to figure out how to deploy our services differently. And at that time, we hired people into our executive team, and we spent a significant amount of money on technology because we thought that could help differentiate us as we scaled forward. And also, by investing in technology, we could figure out different ways to deploy our services. Ultimately, the result of what began in 2012 was a metamorphosis of our company. And we were able to create a platform that would, basically a shared services platform where we could provide a lot of tools, resources, and services to these specialized staffing companies that we had created since 2001. And realized that we had something special, that we could grow and scale much larger with that kind of perspective in mind, that we had this shared services model. So in 2014, we actually made our first acquisition of a company that we didn't start, which was called Major Legal Services, a legal staffing firm headquartered in Northeast Ohio. And we applied our shared services concept that we had been performing on for the existing businesses that we had created, and we saw that we were successful at it. And so in 2015, we decided to kind of really explore the acquisition strategy and this platform shared services model concept, and we ended up acquiring the 12th largest staffing firm in Oregon in August of 2015. And we really focused on culture as a big part of how we were going to expand throughout North America. And that's been that turned out to be an excellent addition into our portfolio of companies here. And we realized that we can get not only to 100 million here in 2016, but we can go much farther than that. So our company, we've won a lot of awards over the years. At the end of the day, I think we serve a purpose, which I'll get into here in a bit. But I think we have a movement. We're trying to change the world, and we have an important job. That's to help people find jobs so that they can feed their families, and they can hopefully be in a position where they can actively learn and grow, and hopefully be a change for the communities that they live in. And we have a part in helping make those things happen. So that's where we sit today. Really proud of what we've done so far, but I think we're just getting started. And the next goal is $1 billion. And I'm glad that you all are a part of this journey with me. And I think in order for us to get to $1 billion, it's all about the people. It's all about the talent that we bring in this company. And hopefully we give you the right tools, and we give you a culture that you believe in and are passionate about, and we give you a career pathway so that you can take the steps that you want to take in your life, and you can do that here with us. So with that, I'm going to transition into the next piece, which is really about our culture, and I'm going to focus in on a couple of different things. One is this map here, and I'm going to focus in on the top part of it, which really talks about our purpose, our vision, and our mission, and the values and the pillars that we have to support those values. That's really the heart of our company. And in doing so, we created like a tree concept that I'll talk about, and which looks like an alien bush. But I'm going to talk through that as well, so that we can hopefully by the time we're done have a good understanding of what our culture is. So I want to talk about our culture, and I'm going to go through a couple of different things. One is a strategy articulation map. So it was weird. So it's several years now, but we had started growing, like I had mentioned earlier, and I remember lifting my head up one day. I'm like, how is this happening? How do we have all these companies that rely on us every day for talent? And how do I have all of these people working on a company that at 27 years old started in 2001, and all these people are on my team, and they want to win, and they want to help see this thing grow. What is going on here? I tend to be a very self-reflective person, and I was just really wanting to figure this out. So I actually hired a consultant who spent 6 months with me creating the strategy articulation map. And actually, this one page here is how I run the business. So everything that we do, every decision we make, I can go into one of these buckets to understand, is it really following through on that bucket, and is it the right decision to make? And over the years since he helped me create this, I've kind of added to it and changed it up because I think it's an ever-evolving document. But one of the most important things that I added to this, which really changed everything for me, was really about what's the purpose of this company. In college, they don't educate you on, hey, find something that has a purpose. Make sure that when you get a job, it's not just about making money and getting a paycheck to support your family, but do something that actually makes you feel good at the end of the day. For many years, even after I started this company, what I was really passionate about was being a wrestling coach. When I was in high school, my wrestling coaches really were true inspirations in helping me figure out how to unlock my unrealized potential that existed within me. I was a really good athlete, and I was a really good wrestler in practice. So in practice, I could beat anybody. I was probably one of the best in the country, and I'm not just saying that. But when it came down to actual wrestling matches, I usually succumbed to the pressure, and I would lose to people that I didn't have any business losing to. And it was very frustrating for the coaching staff. In fact, one of the coaches at one point ended up losing his job because he got so frustrated in practice one day, and it came out of nowhere where he just lost it and jumped me. And there was an indoor track right next to our where we practiced, and there were some people on the school board that were running around and watched it happen, and they had to pull him away from me as he was trying to punch me because he was so frustrated. And I really love the guy, and he's helped me out so much in my life as an adult. I can't thank him enough. And I can understand why he was so frustrated, because I was just that good, and I was performing not even remotely close to how good I really was. A lot of it was that I just couldn't figure out how to connect to that mentally. And so the other coaches always worked with me after practice, just having conversations and getting me to think about the world differently and getting to think about myself differently. And it wasn't until my senior year where things started to click and I started to perform up to my potential. And I ever since that moment, I was able to take that experience and really leverage that for the rest of my life, all through college. I've always felt that I can do anything I want if I want to, if I'm properly planned and prepared for. And so that inspiration, what they gave me and allowing me to connect to who I could be as a human being, was completely inspiring to me. So when I started the business here, I did it with the intention that I'm going to create success in this business so that I can eventually go and be a high school wrestling coach. And why? It's because that was my experience of how I got so much value, and I thought, my ability to change people and to help people was probably best suited as a wrestling coach, because that was my experience. And so people would laugh and make fun of me, other people in our community who were business owners, because we were creating such success here with our business, and we were growing at such a rate that people were like, "Are you kidding me? You want to be a high school wrestling coach?" So it was always a kind of a joke. Well, it wasn't until I was having some cocktails with some business owners that I was friends with, and that we were joking around about it, that one person actually stopped for a second, stared at me as he looked at his cocktail, and said, "Aaron, haven't you always been a wrestling coach, just not on the mat?" And it blew me away. I get chills just even thinking about it. Just totally blew me away, because I started reflecting back on this business and all of the people that were creating success within it, and people that were just their first job out of college, or people that were transitioning their career into staffing, and watching them create success that they hadn't had before, and watching them grow and develop. And it hit me. I had always been a wrestling coach. I just wasn't doing it on the mat. And it made me realize that the reason why I wanted to be a wrestling coach was that I wanted to be able to unlock unrealized potential in others. I've been doing that the entire time with this company. Not only was I doing it with people that were making careers here in the company, but I was able to do that with what we did as a service. We were matching talent with opportunity. And when we did it in the right way, and those certain moments, we unlocked unrealized potential. And when that happened, that person usually got promoted and kept adding value to their business. And as a result, that business ended up becoming more successful. And so I realized when I really stepped back that I was doing all the things that I wanted to do in my life right here in this company. And ever since then, I love waking up every day. I love thinking about how we can unlock unrealized potential with everything that we touch here in this company. And that really is the purpose. Our purpose is motivating the world to unlock the power of unrealized potential. We happen to do that through innovative human capital solutions. And my hopes are, what I inspire others to do, is that if they are going to make a career here, make that your inspiration. Make that your purpose. Think about how you can not only first help unlock your own unrealized potential, but how can you do that with others? So everything that I'm going to talk about moving forward is what we do to help serve that purpose. Now, before I talk about the other things, I do want to say that unlocking unrealized potential, as inspirational as it sounds, it's not easy to do. I usually equate this to baseball. And if you're familiar with baseball, they have batting averages. And somebody who bats 300, that means that for every 10 at-bats, they're actually getting hits only 3 times out of those 10 at-bats. So 7 times they're failing. They're failing more often than not. But if you bat 300, and you can do that for 15, 20 years, there's a really good chance you're going to make the Hall of Fame. That's considered excellence. That's very similar to what our purpose is about. And unlocking unrealized potential, it's not something that we're going to do all the time. We're going to try to achieve it as often as possible, and we want to make the Hall of Fame. And if we can bat 300, we can do that. And so everything that we do is figuring out how do we put ourselves in a position, how do we prepare properly so that we can get ourselves where we're hitting 300 batting average or above on serving this purpose to unlock unrealized potential. So I want to make sure that you understand that as we start this journey together. So I said, our purpose is really about unlocking unrealized potential. And so now it's figuring out, well, how do we best prepare ourselves and put ourselves in a position to be able to accomplish that as much and as often as possible. So now we move on to the vision. So the vision is really an aspirational comment around what can we do, what are we going to do in order for us to serve our purpose. I believe that our vision is about engaging every company in America that truly believes that talent is their most important asset. If you've had other careers or other jobs in the past, then you probably know not every company believes that talent is their most important asset. They might believe their product. If they're a restaurant, they might think their food. It might be technology. It might be the executive leadership or the owner of the business thinking that if they're not there, the business fails. All of those things could be factors in why companies don't believe talent is their most important asset. We want to find the ones that do, because we know that if we do, our value proposition matters. And our ability to match the right talent with an opportunity within a company where people actually care about them and care about their success will put us into a position where we can unlock unrealized potential on a more consistent basis, and we can get to that 300 batting average. So that's really about the vision. What that means, though, when you're looking to engage every company in America believes talent is the most important asset, it means that we need to not engage with a lot of companies out there who don't. So the hard part, especially if you're new, if you don't have a lot of experience in business or are new to the staffing and recruitment industry, means you have to learn how to say no to some opportunities that, even though they are opportunities, somebody's going to give you a job order to work on, and maybe with a company that doesn't fit the criteria, and we need to learn how to say no. That's a very hard thing to do. But that's our vision. That's our aspirational goal, is to find every company in America that fits that criteria. So then we move forward to our mission. And our mission really is, what are we going to do every single day to put ourselves in a position where we can execute on the opportunities that come into our organization, where we can unlock and realize potential as the result. What are we going to do every day? So really the easiest way to put this is that we put a focus on what's called operational excellence. What does that mean? It means we're going to find the best ways to get the result that we're looking for. So, I guess an easier way to put it is that, let's say we create a result that unlocks unrealized potential. We're going to peel the onion back, find out what were the things that we did along the way to get to the result we're looking for. And if we can find the processes that we took and we think they are repeatable processes, we can do them over and over again. Well, the first thing we're going to look at is technology. Can we have technology build automation around those processes so that humans can't interfere, and we can ensure that we're doing those things each and every time? In most cases, we can't do that. And so what we want to do is find and develop best practices around those processes and be able to train to them and make sure that all of our people are doing that each and every time they reach that next step in that process. And if we can do that and do that consistently, then we'll obtain operational excellence around the things that we need to do to create the ultimate result, which is to unlock unrealized potential. So that's our mission every day, centered around operational excellence. So I've talked to you about our purpose, why we come into work every day. I've talked to you about how we're going, what do we need to do, and or how do we position ourselves in order so that we can serve our purpose, which is about engaging companies that believe that talent is our most important asset. And then I've talked about how do we do this? How do we get it done? And it's really about focusing operational excellence and about automating and mandating best practices so that we can achieve our ultimate result, which is to unlock and realize potential.